Failure has a bad reputation. The moment we fail, we think we've lost something. Our confidence, our credibility, our chance to succeed. We've been taught to fear failure, avoid failure, and hide failure. But what if that's exactly backwards? The most successful people in the world don't succeed because they never fail. They succeed because they understand something the rest of us often miss. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is the foundation of it. Every setback carries a lesson. Every rejection reveals a weakness you can strengthen. Every mistake forces you to grow into someone you couldn't become any other way. The question isn't whether you'll fail. You will. The real question is, what will you do with it? Because the difference between ordinary people and extraordinary people isn't talent, luck, or intelligence. It's the ability to transform pain into purpose, setbacks into strength, and failure into fuel. In today's speech, we're going to explore how to stop seeing failure as the end of your story and start using it as the very thing that gives you an advantage. Because sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened for you if you choose to learn from it. Let's begin. Most people grow up believing that success and failure sit on opposite sides of a line. You either win or you lose. You either achieve your goal or you don't. From an early age, we're rewarded for getting the right answers, praised for coming first, and often judged by our results instead of our effort. Over time, this creates a dangerous belief that failure is something to avoid at all costs. It becomes something that threatens our identity rather than something that strengthens our character. But this belief is one of the biggest reasons so many people never reach their true potential. The reality is that failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of success. It is one of the essential ingredients that makes meaningful achievement possible. Every person who has built something extraordinary has faced moments where things didn't go according to plan. They experienced rejection, disappointment, uncertainty, and setbacks. What separated them from everyone else wasn't the absence of failure. It was the willingness to keep moving despite it. Think about learning to walk as a child. No one expects a baby to stand up and take perfect steps on the first attempt. Falling isn't considered proof that the child isn't capable of walking. It's simply part of the learning process. Every stumble teaches balance. Every fall strengthens coordination. Every attempt builds confidence. We celebrate persistence because we understand that failure is necessary for growth. Somewhere along the journey into adulthood, many people forget this simple truth. They begin to see mistakes as signs that they aren't talented enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. The same pattern appears in every meaningful skill. No musician masters an instrument without hitting wrong notes thousands of times. No athlete reaches the highest level without losing competitions, making costly mistakes, and enduring difficult seasons. No entrepreneur builds a successful business without facing setbacks that challenge every assumption they once believed. Behind every achievement is a collection of failures that most people never see. One of the biggest misconceptions about successful people is that they possess something special that protects them from failure. People often imagine that confidence comes first and success follows. In reality, confidence usually comes after surviving difficult experiences. Every obstacle overcome becomes evidence that you are stronger than you thought. Every challenge faced becomes proof that you can adapt, improve, and continue moving forward even when circumstances are uncertain. Failure has a unique way of revealing the truth. Success can sometimes hide weaknesses because good results make us believe everything is working perfectly. Failure removes that illusion. It forces us to examine our habits, decisions, and assumptions. It shines a light on areas that need improvement. It exposes gaps in knowledge, weaknesses in preparation, and flaws in strategy. While this process can feel uncomfortable, it is also incredibly valuable because awareness is always the first step toward improvement. Many people stop after their first major disappointment because they interpret failure as a final verdict instead of temporary feedback. They think one rejection means they aren't talented. One unsuccessful attempt means they aren't capable. One mistake convinces them they should give up entirely. But failure doesn't define your future unless you allow it to define your identity. An event can never determine your worth. It only provides information about your current approach. The most resilient people understand that every failure carries a lesson hidden beneath the disappointment. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" they begin asking, "What can this teach me?" That single shift changes everything. It transforms frustration into curiosity. It turns regret into reflection. It replaces self-doubt with self-improvement. The experience itself doesn't change, but the meaning attached to it changes completely. There is also an important difference between failing and being a failure. Failing is something that happens. Being a failure is something a person chooses to believe about themselves. One describes an event. The other describes an identity. Confusing the two creates unnecessary suffering. Everyone experiences failure at some point, but not everyone allows it to become part of who they are. The people who eventually succeed refuse to let temporary outcomes define permanent beliefs about themselves. Growth rarely happens when everything feels comfortable. Comfort encourages repetition, while challenge encourages adaptation. Failure interrupts routines that no longer serve us. It pushes us to think differently, develop new skills, and explore better solutions. Without setbacks, many people would never discover strengths they didn't know they possessed. Some of life's greatest breakthroughs emerge only because previous attempts didn't work as expected. Fear of failure often becomes more damaging than failure itself. It convinces people not to apply for opportunities, not to share ideas, not to start businesses, not to pursue dreams, and not to take meaningful risks. They remain trapped in situations that feel safe but prevent growth. Ironically, by trying so hard to avoid failure, they also avoid the possibility of extraordinary success. Progress always requires uncertainty because every new step involves entering unfamiliar territory. Every meaningful achievement demands courage before it delivers confidence. Courage is acting even when success isn't guaranteed. It's choosing to move forward despite uncertainty. Every time you continue after a setback, you strengthen that courage. Every lesson learned makes you wiser. Every challenge survived makes you more resilient. Over time, the very experiences that once seemed like evidence of defeat become the foundation of your greatest strengths. When you begin to understand that failure and success are partners rather than enemies, your entire perspective changes. You stop measuring your progress by how often you avoid mistakes and start measuring it by how often you learn from them. You become less concerned with appearing perfect and more committed to becoming better. Instead of fearing setbacks, you recognize them as signs that you're stretching beyond your comfort zone, exploring new possibilities, and building the experience that lasting success always requires. Every setback carries a lesson, even when it doesn't feel that way in the moment. When life doesn't go according to plan, our first reaction is often frustration. We focus on what we lost instead of what we can learn. We replay the disappointment over and over again, asking ourselves why things happened the way they did. But if you look closely at the lives of people who achieve extraordinary things, you'll notice a common pattern. They don't waste all their energy trying to erase setbacks from their story. Instead, they use those setbacks as teachers that prepare them for the next opportunity. The problem is that lessons rarely arrive wrapped in comfort. They come disguised as rejection, disappointment, mistakes, unexpected obstacles, and moments of uncertainty. That's why so many people miss them. They're too focused on escaping the pain to recognize the wisdom hidden inside it. Every challenge has something to reveal, but only if you're willing to pause long enough to ask the right questions. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this experience trying to teach me?" That small shift in perspective changes everything because it transforms you from a victim of circumstances into a student of growth. One unsuccessful attempt doesn't mean you're incapable. It often means your strategy needs improvement. Imagine trying to unlock a door with the wrong key. If the key doesn't work, you don't conclude that the door is impossible to open. You simply look for another key. Yet when people face setbacks in life, they often assume there's something fundamentally wrong with them instead of considering that their approach might need adjustment. The lesson isn't always about working harder. Sometimes it's about working differently. Setbacks reveal information that success often hides. When everything is going well, it's easy to overlook weaknesses. Positive results can create the illusion that every decision you're making is perfect. Failure removes that illusion. It exposes blind spots you didn't know existed. It shows where your preparation was lacking, where your assumptions were incorrect, and where your habits need improvement. These discoveries may feel uncomfortable, but they are incredibly valuable because awareness is the first step toward meaningful change. Think about every skill you've ever developed. Whether it was learning to ride a bicycle, speak a new language, play a sport, or master a profession, mistakes were never interruptions in the learning process. They were the learning process. Every error provided feedback. Every correction brought improvement. Progress wasn't built on perfection. It was built on repeated adjustments. Life works the same way. The setbacks you experience today often contain the exact information you need to perform better tomorrow. One of the most important lessons setbacks teaches patience. We live in a world that celebrates instant success, overnight achievements, and rapid results. Social media often makes it appear as though successful people reach the top effortlessly. What we rarely see are the years of preparation, rejection, and quiet persistence behind those achievements. Setbacks remind us that meaningful growth takes time. They force us to slow down, refine our skills, and build a stronger foundation before moving forward. Another lesson hidden inside setbacks is humility. Success can sometimes convince us that we have all the answers. Failure reminds us that there's always more to learn. It keeps us curious instead of complacent. It encourages us to seek advice, improve our knowledge, and remain open to different perspectives. Humility isn't a weakness. It's one of the greatest strengths because it creates room for continuous improvement. Setbacks also teach resilience. Every difficult experience you survive increases your capacity to handle future challenges. Think about someone lifting weights for the first time. The resistance feels difficult because the muscles haven't adapted yet. Over time, consistent challenges make those muscles stronger. Emotional resilience develops in much the same way. Every obstacle you overcome strengthens your ability to face uncertainty with confidence. What once seemed overwhelming gradually becomes manageable because you've already proven to yourself that you can endure difficult moments. Sometimes the greatest lesson a setback teaches has nothing to do with achieving a goal. Instead, it reveals who you are becoming throughout the journey. Challenges expose your values, your discipline, your character, and your determination. They show whether you're willing to stay committed even when progress feels invisible. Anyone can stay motivated when everything is working. True character appears when circumstances become difficult and quitting seems easier than continuing. Setbacks often redirect us toward opportunities we never would have discovered otherwise. A closed door forces us to notice another path. A failed plan encourages us to explore a better idea. An unexpected obstacle introduces us to skills, relationships, or experiences that eventually become some of the most valuable parts of our journey. Looking back, many people realize that what initially felt like the worst moment of their lives became the turning point that led them somewhere far better than they had imagined. Another powerful lesson is the importance of preparation. Sometimes a setback isn't telling you to stop. It's telling you to prepare more thoroughly. It highlights areas where additional practice, knowledge, or experience will make future success far more sustainable. Temporary disappointment often prevents permanent regret because it gives you the chance to improve before bigger opportunities arrive. There is also wisdom in learning that not everything is within your control. You can prepare carefully, work tirelessly, and make thoughtful decisions, yet some outcomes will still depend on circumstances beyond your influence. Setbacks teach acceptance without surrender. They remind you to focus your energy on your attitude, your effort, your decisions, and your willingness to adapt instead of becoming consumed by things you cannot change. People who grow the most aren't necessarily the ones who experience the fewest setbacks. They're the ones who consistently extract lessons from every experience. They understand that every challenge adds another piece to the puzzle of personal growth. Every disappointment sharpens judgment. Every mistake improves awareness. Every obstacle strengthens determination. The value of a setback isn't measured by how painful it feels, but by how much wisdom you choose to carry forward from it. When you begin viewing setbacks as opportunities to learn instead of evidence that you've failed, your relationship with challenges changes completely. You stop fearing mistakes because you understand they contain valuable information. You become more willing to take meaningful risks because you know that every outcome, whether successful or unsuccessful, contributes to your growth. The lesson inside every setback becomes another tool that prepares you for greater opportunities, stronger decisions, deeper confidence, and a wiser version of yourself. Your mindset is one of the most powerful forces shaping your life. It influences how you interpret events, respond to challenges, and decide what happens next. Two people can experience the exact same failure and walk away with completely different futures. One sees the setback as proof that they are not good enough. The other sees it as evidence that there is still room to grow. The difference is not talent, intelligence, or luck. The difference is mindset. Your comeback is determined long before you achieve success. It begins the moment you decide what your failure actually means. Most people believe that circumstances create confidence, but confidence is often created by perspective. If you believe every obstacle is a sign to stop, you'll hesitate every time life becomes difficult. If you believe every obstacle is preparing you for something greater, you'll continue moving even when the road feels uncertain. The situation may remain exactly the same, but your interpretation changes your response, and your response ultimately shapes your future. Think about the moments in your life that challenge you the most. At the time, they probably felt overwhelming. You questioned your abilities, your decisions, and maybe even your dreams. Looking back now, many of those experiences taught you lessons that comfort never could. They made you stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The event itself wasn't the source of your growth. Your willingness to learn from it was. That's the power of mindset. It transforms painful experiences into valuable education. A fixed mindset believes that abilities are permanent. It says, if I fail, it means I'm not capable. It treats mistakes as personal flaws rather than opportunities to improve. Because of this belief, people begin avoiding difficult challenges. They stay inside their comfort zones where success feels more predictable. They avoid situations where failure is possible because they fear what it might say about them. Over time, this creates a life that feels safe on the surface but limits growth beneath it. A growth mindset operates differently. It understands that abilities can be developed through consistent effort, learning, and experience. Instead of saying, I can't do this, it says, I can't do this yet. That single word changes everything because it leaves room for progress. It acknowledges that mastery is a process rather than an event. Every expert was once a beginner. Every skilled professional once struggled with the basics. Every successful leader once lacked the experience they have today. Your comeback doesn't begin when circumstances improve. It begins when your thinking improves. Waiting for life to become easier before believing in yourself is like waiting for the sun to rise before deciding to open your eyes. Real change starts internally. Once your mindset shifts, your actions begin to follow. You become more willing to try again, more patient with the learning process, and more resilient when challenges appear. One of the greatest obstacles to a strong mindset is the habit of personalizing failure. When something doesn't work out, people often say, I'm a failure. Instead of saying, that attempt failed. Those two statements may sound similar, but they create completely different realities. One attacks identity. The other evaluates an event. Your identity should never be determined by a single outcome. Results change, skills improve, circumstances evolve. The person who refuses to let temporary setbacks define permanent self-worth creates space for future success. Mindset also influences the questions you ask yourself. After disappointment, many people immediately ask, why am I not good enough? That question naturally produces discouraging answers because the brain searches for evidence to support it. Instead, ask, what can I improve? Or what is this experience teaching me? These questions direct your